So thank you very much, Alex, for joining today. So we are very lucky to have Alex Witham from Landbay joining us. Landbay is a big intermediary mortgage lender, and we're very grateful for your time, Alex. I know you're very busy. Just before we get started, just obviously want to be clear, today is a general kind of purpose chat and for information purposes. So none of the information that we discussed today should be relied upon from advice. And of course, Landbay and Alex, who could self as well, are not providing any advice in this session. We're just talking around some of the things to be considered around buy-to-lets. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Alex, again, thanks for joining us today. So, what I think our listeners and watchers would love to know more about is, could you start by sharing a little bit around who Landbay is? It's a lender I'm very familiar with, but I appreciate it's not a name on the high street every client would immediately think of. And yeah, just give us a little information around who Landbay is, how you work, and what the kind of typical client of Landbay is.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, we are a intermediary only buy-to-let mortgage lender, and what that means is we don't deal directly to the end consumer. Um, so we rely on people like yourself, Paul, to introduce clients to us. We are what's called a funded lender. We are not a retail bank, so you can't go and obtain an ISA or a bond or a savings account with Landbay. So we rely on receiving funds from our various different sources, which are both retail banks, balance sheet lenders, other institutional funders, insurance funds, and so on. We have a loan book of around 2.3, 2.4 billion in the region of, certainly at the point of this recording, which is June 2024. I myself have been in lending since around 2014, 2015, working directly for lenders. Started my career at NatWest in their retail bank, dealing with residential and buy-to-let mortgages. Moved over to Aldermore 2 or 3 years later, and then I've been at Landbay now for 5 years as of this December. So although in that time COVID's happened and time has just rolled so quickly, I've had a second child as well, which just accelerates time and things like that. So yeah, time has flown. But um, back to Landbay, from a kind of what we stand for, really, service is our primary focus. Our broker portal is absolutely excellent. Yourself, Paul, I'm sure you've used it, and it's very intuitive, slick, and easy to use. It's the modern time, so people like to look at reviews, things like Trustpilot, and if you do look up Landbay on Trustpilot, you'll see we have a 4.5 out of 5 excellent review. So the people that do engage and use Landbay tend to say good things, which is encouraging for people when they're, sourcing their lenders, to identify, generally what is the experience from users going to be like.
Mm.
My role itself, I guess you could say I'm a business development manager. That's kind of what the industry knows my role as, even though my title is senior regional account manager. It's effectively in the BDM category, if you like. So essentially, my role is not to provide advice to the end consumer, such as the customer. My job is primarily to aid the lender I represent to grow their loan book and distribution. So that would be onboarding new brokers, new introducers like yourself, relationship managing existing broker relationships that we have, making sure that they're kept abreast with criteria, changes in product, consulting with them on complex inquiries is a massive part of my job role. But it really is a role that expands into dozens and dozens and dozens of categories because, I also act as an extension to our marketing department using my social media presence to educate on products and criteria. And I'm also a trainer sometimes. I'll go out and I'll train and educate brokers on certain sectors or what the current market sentiments are, educate new starters on certain things in the market they need to be aware of. So it's quite a broad role that I've been doing quite a number of years. I'm based in Norwich myself. Landbay are based in London, Victoria. That's where our central head office and our operations teams are. And we've been lending now since 2014. So we've kind of weathered, the market over that 10 tempestuous years, really, of Things when the going was good and rates were twos and threes to, you know, kind of shortly after the September 2022, what was it, Liz Truss era, where the economy went in a bit of a wobble, interest rates rose, which had a massive effect on buy-to-let lending, to kind of now more a kind of steady storm, if you like. Interest rates are returning back to a new normal. So yeah, it's been an interesting 10 years, that's to say the least.
No, absolutely. That's a very impressive journey over those 10 years. And like you say, so much has happened. You know, obviously personally for you, but also I guess professionally. And as you say there on your last point, the wider industry, hasn't it? The last 10 years, it's you know, the mortgage world now looks very different to how it looked 10 years ago. Some bits of regulation, and then obviously the market, and then obviously the wider political things you've mentioned there, everything from Brexit to Liz Truss having a go, whatever she was doing. So yeah, it's and then COVID, of course. So yeah, it's been very very challenging, but we never makes it a dull moment, does it? There's always something happening. Just a little bit on Landbay then. So what would you say is a typical client of Landbay in terms of who comes to you? I mean, obviously I know because I introduced many clients to you, but just give us a little bit of insight of maybe the typical client who comes to Landbay.
Yeah, sure. So I would say Landbay's primary client is where the borrower is underserved from a high street lender. And quite often, as you know, from doing this for so many years yourself, there are a number of high street lenders that are great for the majority of clients out there, especially in residential owner occupied. But within the buy-to-let sector, quite often if landlords have larger portfolios, or perhaps they're exploring limited companies instead of private ownership, the pool of lenders that can assist people with that shrinks quite significantly. So Landbay are typically not pitching ourselves directly against the prime, lowest rate, cheapest lender in the market who takes, the most vanilla client in the world. We are more to fill the void of where high street lenders can't quite get their head around that type of client's requirements or circumstances. That's our angle. So we are more of a criteria-driven lender than a cheapest lender to go to. That's not to say we are a premium lender. However, typically, if you look at a high street lender versus Landbay, you may experience the costs to be a little more expensive. But most of our clients tend to be small, medium-sized portfolios, or even the larger end of the portfolios. We've got some clients with 60, 65 million pound residential portfolios on our books. We can also lend to first-time landlords. And most of our clients do tend to be limited company, because the moment you're looking to source a mortgage product and you select on your mortgage sourcing tool, it's limited company, it cuts out 80-90% of the market, doesn't it? And you're left with just the specialist lenders and a couple of the high street building societies as well. So it's more the criteria is where we are pitching ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's interesting, isn't it? You say there's the kind of the mass market and the slightly more specialist lender, but there's then that specialist lender who is able just to do things that the main market just can't do or won't do at the moment. And that's where, when you've got a client who's not got their situation as straightforward, or the need for the property or the numbers is just a little bit more unique, or indeed the limited company side, which is, I'd say, still kind of a niche side, albeit not too sure why, considering where the tax changes have gone around that. But that's only ever seeming to grow. And I think we're starting to see now even some of the more mainstream lenders starting to turn on to the idea of limited companies, because they're realizing that's kind of where a chunk of the market is going. But yeah, no, thank you for that introduction to Landbay. That really helps. Thank you for that. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, please ask below and hit subscribe below so you don't miss out on our next episode.